Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 21 of the NatalieinRenaissance podcast. So, I've been talking a lot about thought, about one's inner world, and also about one's energy, and I've talked about it from a lot of different approaches. But today, I wanted to approach it from a different approach. And as many of you know, I am a faith-based girly, and everything that I do somehow has my faith worked into that. I am a Christian and it's worked into things that I do, and it's a part of my work just because it's part of the belief system that I have adopted. And in talking about being a business owner, an artist, and a creative, it wouldn't be authentic for me to not also include this very important part of my life, because as I want to share today, there's so many different facets and so many different gems of wisdom that come from the Bible and that really help me in the way I think. And so I want to share a little bit about it in regards to one's thought world and one's energy. And someone was recently asking me about manifestation, and I think a lot of people can take manifestation into the wrong way just because there are some associations that they may not necessarily agree with. But I think manifesting, at least in my opinion, we don't necessarily have to use that word, but it's simply imagining something in your mind, believing that it is possible for you, and then taking steps in your own reality to encourage that and invite that into your own reality. And I am an idea person. I have a big imagination, and there have been so many times when I have simply imagined something. Of course, I've done the work to bring it to life, but I have had the privilege of seeing many things that I've only thought of or have only existed in my head, and now they are coming to light and they are starting to appear and bloom before my very eyes. And so I definitely think that this mental game is very, very important, and our mental capacities of belief, I think they are tools given to us for sure. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that and also our inner worlds today, and using some text from the Bible because I think they're super helpful and really interesting, especially if you consider yourself to be a faith-based person. And so one of the verses that I wanted to start off with is Matthew 6:21 from the New Testament, and it says, "Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." And a lot of people talk about the word treasure there as money, right? When people spend money on something, they care about it. And for people who say they want to do something, but they don't necessarily do anything about that, they don't actually want it. And so I love, whenever I'm looking at some of these texts, I love going back to the original language, which is Koine Greek. And the cool thing is that I can go on and look up the interlinear, which is like the original preserved text, to find what the original meaning was. As we know, language is constantly shifting and changing, and there's lots of different English translations because people read on different comprehension levels, or they just want something that they can understand. And so all of those are just tools, but if I want to go back and see what the original intent of the word was, I'll go back to the interlinear Greek. And so as I'm looking up these words, the word treasure there, for where your treasure is, that word, it's talking about stored up treasures, and it could be money, but it also could be the thoughts that we have stored up in our heart and our mind. And when you think about it, the greatest treasure house is not the bank. It's not a Swiss bank. It's not some safe somewhere. The greatest storehouse in the entire world is our minds. And so if I read that verse again, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And when we think about the treasure as being the collection of thoughts that we most frequently run through our heads, there your heart will be also. And as I'm digging into these words, the word heart there, it means the place of where our desire meets our decisions. When you care enough about something that it starts influencing your reality. And we know, at least I was just talking with a friend yesterday about our Instagram algorithms and how sometimes we'll be inspired to do something new or maybe a new recipe, and suddenly our entire feed is now based on that lifestyle or those recipes. And it's like, whoa, 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 like I just wanted to explore something new. But that's how our mind works, right? And it's as soon as we have something that we care about, something new, everything is suddenly centered around that new idea or that new thought. And it starts to influence our choices. And so I think this verse is very much saying that what we think about is very much tied to what we care about. And that's the power of advertising, and they know it. People, marketers, salespeople, copywriters, the people who are influencing your thought, they are paid big money because they know that the things that you're thinking about, that's where you're going to make most of your decisions. That's where your attention, your effort is going to be focused on. And having someone's mind, that is being able to tap into someone's greatest treasure, the greatest treasure storehouse in the entire world. And that's where you get to influence the center of all of their choices. And so, again, the power of thought, the power of our minds, it's a really important space. And I love this verse because I think a lot of people are like, oh, that's so woo, like it's not tangible. I don't really need to think about my mind space. But yet, we're using it no matter if we're cognizant of it or not. Our subconscious, our inner world is always at work, influencing our decisions. And if you find yourself thinking the same things over and over and over, maybe it's something negative where you're always thinking about something that could go wrong. Well, if that's always running through your head and that is your most treasured thought because you're thinking it all the time, you're thinking and spending all your energy and attention on it, that is where most of your choices are going to be. And it could imbalance everything else in your life because you're so worried and fearful about that one thing. And you are keeping yourself in this struggle obsession with this negative thought that is actually something that you treasure. And that is where your heart is going to be. And that means that your heart cannot be in other places where you actually want it to be because you're so preoccupied with these other things and it's distracting from your purpose or your goals. Another great verse that kind of goes in tandem with this one is Proverbs 4:23, and it says, "Guard your heart above all else, for it is the source of life." And again, I think that verse is just so beautiful because in linking these two verses together, and that's what it is, building context, it's just noticing that the heart, the place, this inner world, where we have all of our desires, where all of these choices are being made on the inside, it's the source of life. And we have to guard it because it is such an important facet of us. And I think a lot of us are careful about our physical safety. A lot of us are very cognizant of our financial safety, but what about our mental safety? And the word there, guard, that word, natsar, it means to be a watchman over it, to set a guard, to be very protective over your heart. And again, that word heart is your imagination, your energy, your inner thoughts, and your attention. And we need to guard that space. And it says above all else, which I think is really interesting because I don't think that too many of us are really cognizant of keeping our mind space protected and being careful and observant about the influences that are there because it's the source of life. And if you think about like a spring of water or something that is a source, right, of water, think about if that got polluted, what would happen to everything else? Well, it wouldn't be good. It would really harm the well-being, it would harm the health, it would harm everything. And the cleanup process, I mean, we hear about spills, oil spills occasionally, and they are such a horrible thing to clean up and to deal with. Well, when this verse is explaining when that happens to your imagination, to your attention, to your inner thoughts, that's going to be really difficult because it's the source of life. It's the source of everything that you do. And so if our mind space is constantly drowning in negativity, if it's constantly, I can't do this, I can't do that, I'm no good, blah, 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 that is like mind pollution, where when opportunities are there and you are totally prepared, you are totally ready for them, but you don't recognize and believe that in your heart, your imagination and attention are working against you, you are not going to be able to step into that. And I think that's where this concept of manifestation has taken over, because I think these things, these mental states, this inner world, I think it does lean a little bit spiritual. And so for me, like, of course, my faith really helps me in this way. For other people, it might be something else. But manifestation, I think, and why it's gaining so much traction is because people are realizing the importance of this inner world and how so much of our normal programming does not geared to our best interests. It's not given to us to be the best person that we can be. It doesn't recognize our potential. And I think that is just a reflection of how much the media and advertising, how well of a job they have done in making us observers and on the sidelines, and we are gripped with perfectionistic tendencies that aren't realistic, and we stop ourselves before we even try, why we're living in faith rather than in fear, because our hearts, this space, this mind space, our treasure storehouse, has been completely robbed and overrun by every single influence in the world. And so really just deciding that that space is important, and it does require some intentional thought and attention on your part, because again, it's the source of life. And I think if our lives don't feel amazing from the inside out, our reality is not going to reflect that. And so again, these things are so precious. Our imagination, our attention, our energy, the thoughts that we are thinking, they are so important because they are the source of life, and they make up what this text calls the heart, right? It's like that one place of spirit and of soul. It's just super, super special. Another verse that I wanted to bring in is from Philippians in the New Testament, Philippians 4:8, and this is Paul writing, and he says, "Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, and if anything is worthy of praise, think about these things." And I love how in this letter, and Philippians is such an encouraging book. It's all about encouragement and building each other up and focusing on the good things, because no matter what situation you're in or what circumstances, there are always positive things. And I love how he says, you have a choice what you think about. And I want you to think about things that are true, things that are lovely, things that are pure. And I just love those focus, because I think so many people, as you interact with them and they're like, oh, wow, you have your head in the clouds, or wow, you have such a big imagination, they're not taking into account that mental health is really about the thought world and how much command or how much influence you feel that you have on your own mind. And I love this text because it shows that we do have some agency, especially over our own minds. And what's going to help us navigate through any circumstance in life that we find ourselves is how we choose to channel that inner thought world that we have. And what is going to keep our source of life healthy, positive, productive, and it's going to influence us to grow and to move and to just be very healthy and clean. And that is thinking beautiful thoughts, because whatever we think, we will become. And so if you want to have a beautiful life, think beautiful thoughts. Surround yourself with beautiful images. If you want to change something, then surround yourself with that and you will become that. And so again, that word think, going back to the Greek, it's such a treasure hunt in dissecting these texts and going back to the original, which I love. But that word think, it's not just like a surface level word. It actually is a much more deep word that means to compute, to take it seriously, to take into account, almost like you're balancing a checkbook or balancing your wallet. That's what that word means. And it's not just, let them pop in your mind. No, it's actually taking it very seriously, like you would doing your taxes. Although, if we're thinking about things that are lovely and true, I don't know if taxes necessarily qualifies, but it just shows that our mind space, again, it's a treasure house, it's a storehouse, and what we put in is very, very important. And doing this inner work, it's just like going to the gym or getting in a good workout. It takes effort, and it also takes awareness, And it's also acknowledging that you have some kind of agency and influence and power over this space. One of the things I think for anyone who is not in the best of health, and of course there are all these, conditions, and I'm not here to talk about genetic things or things that are out of your control. I'm talking to someone who is able-bodied, someone who has control and wants to do things differently because they are aware and they know they can. I think when you wake up, you can decide, okay, I'm going to quickly do a 10-minute workout, or I'm going to go to the gym, right? That is something within your reach that you can choose to do. And when that is something that you accept, and it makes you feel good because there is something that you can do about it. And when you do it, it just feels great that you are helping yourself out, that you are doing something that is in your best favor to do. And so again, as we're thinking about the importance of our mind space, how it's the source of everything that we do, how our energy and our attention, it's treasure. And of course, as I've mentioned, the ads and marketing, it's $1 billion industry. Knowing how people think, being able to influence them, that's a sign of influence and of power. And we need to be careful. And number one, I think it's a mistake to just say, oh, well, this idea of manifestation and this idea of the law of attraction, it's not real. And I think people who immediately say things like that, they say them out of a reaction because they don't want to be responsible for what happens in their lives. And they don't want to admit that they have been given something, and in their soul, they have power to change their lives. And I think for people who are addicted, again, their source of life, something has happened, and they are really hesitant to sort of claim back their power, to reclaim their power, and to do things differently because it would change their world. And getting rid of the negative thought loops that have polluted their life choices and the things that they are addicted to, that's a big life change. But it's so worth it. It is so worth it, and it is so important. And of course, there are things that we have all gone through. There are painful things, traumas, things that people have said to us, maybe even loved one at times, that it's very difficult to hear or to deal with, and that's where, going to therapy can help, unwriting these scripts and detaching them from our souls. That can be a really painful process, but there is hope on the other side of that. There is beauty on the other side of that. And we all have our own scars. Some are more hidden, some are more visible. But I think that's just life and growth in general. And the cleanup process is not easy, and it is not 100% clean. And it's not like you can wake up one day and magically change whatever you want to change. However, acknowledging that you do own your own mind space, acknowledging that you do have agency and you do have power to make change, that's the first step, and that's the most important step, where you start believing in yourself, where you start thinking about all the thoughts that you have and saying, okay, was this given to me by someone who had my best interests in mind, who knew me, who knows that I am a soul and that I was put here to do something very specific? Or is it something that you've just mindly accepted and believed in, but it has crippled you and harmed you, and you feel like you won't be able to do things over or to change? And so again, these things that are living in our heads rent-free, we think of the phrase, I'm trying to get under their skin or get in their head. That is so true, because people who can tap into our thought worlds, people who can tap into that really special place, our minds, our treasure houses, the source of our lives, our hearts, they're taking away from the pure soul and who you were made to be. And so again, I think the reason I share these things isn't to bring anybody down or to judge anyone, not at all. I'm here to encourage you, and I'm here to challenge you as well. I am here to challenge myself most of all, because these are things that I'm also working on and things that I'm doing daily, and it's just like a physical workout, right? Where being aware of these things, acknowledging these things that I have work to do to change the inside, things I need to do to better protect my heart, to protect my mind space, it's an important part of my work and of my future. And I am invested in all of those things. I'm invested in my life. I am invested in my work, in my art, in my faith. And so that's something else that I need to do. And I recognize that it's just as important as a physical workout or, all these other things, the responsible things that we do, taking vitamins, going to bed early. We all need the same care. And as I'm sharing these things, I think about being a creator and an artist and being a faith-based girly. Whenever I do these things and I make something from my imagination come to life, as I'm working for these things, I'm praying for these things, it makes me feel so close to God in that I appreciate Him because He is a creator. He is an artist. Every single day when I see nature or as I learn more about the brain and the learning process, I'm in awe every single day. And so as I work in a similar manner of creation, of imagination, of making things come to life that weren't there before, I really feel, and again, this can sound so magic-y, but I think it's just my Natalie brain and the terminology that I use, but I feel like I'm embracing the magic by which the world was made, that calling out something from nothing. And it's just so special. And I feel so at one with the universe. I feel so at one and like I'm in God's presence and as I'm doing what He wants me to do. And I believe He delights in that. I really believe that, and that's my conviction. And so as we're thinking about things we want to do, things we invite into our life, you could call that manifestation or you could call it something differently, where there's so many places where it's, pray, but also get ready. Prep the fields because the rain is coming. Faith without action is dead. And so believing you can from the inside out, it's the first step. It's the first step. And really just, if there's a call on your heart, it's there for a reason. And I think that the negative influences, the dark influences of the world, they know the power of the mind and how it's our greatest asset because it's where our soul and our spirit and all these things link together in the most metaphysical way. And if they can take power over that, we are so limited then, right? And so just tapping into who we were made to be, that power that we have been given, the power of our mind, the greatest mechanism we will ever have, we need to invest in that and start there first. And we need to stop belittling our minds. We need to stop making these things sound like woo, because they're not. I've brought in so many different aspects of neuroscience and of psychology and all these things. And I was even talking to a friend about one aspect, and she's like, science, we cannot explain this. I will admit, we cannot explain this. And so no matter what your framework of life is, I think we can acknowledge that there is something very special about being alive. There's something very special about having consciousness, about having the ability to come up with something from nothing and to have animation and to create and to do art and to book a flight and go somewhere and to make a new recipe. That is living and that is being alive, and I absolutely love it. I absolutely love being alive, and I love using my mind. And I know some people take pride in being able to understand complex things like physics or understand new things in the universe. And I just take pride in the fact that I am alive and I can feel the sun on my face. And every day I always want to be grateful, because how many people wish they could be alive but aren't? I think about that a lot, especially when I get news of a passing. I think one of the first things I do is I take in a deep, deep breath, because I'm taking it for them almost. And I'm feeling the sun on my face and I'm almost doing it for them. And so I am just here sharing a little bit about what it's like to be a faith-based artist, a business owner, being a creator. And also there are times when I have to take my thoughts captive. And that's another verse in 2 Corinthians 10:5. And it's just going to show that sometimes we have these invader energies, these invader thoughts. And again, we have to choose. We have to choose what we do with our mind space. We need to first acknowledge that it is a treasure house. It is the source of life. It's the source of everything that we do, because literally everything that you see in the world was someone's thought that they brought to life. And you could say, well, they manifested that thought. And if you mean that they imagined it, they believed in themselves, they did the work, and they were open and looking for opportunities to make that happen, and they did come their way, then yes, I would agree with that. And so remember that you are so precious. Your mind is your number one asset, and there is no price tag you can put on those things. Absolutely none. And so prioritize your mental health, prioritize your thoughts, and be very, very selective of your energies, your thoughts that you are channeling out to the world, because it is such a sacred and such a valuable thing. And so I just wanted to share a little bit today. And I really hope that this episode challenged you and inspired you and just made you feel so precious. And I think that is another one of my goals as a creator, as a podcaster, is I want to let you know what a treasured individual you are. You are such a special soul, and that's going to be a hill that I will not move from. Thank you so much for listening to this episode today. Please like and follow on Instagram if you're not already at NatalieinRenaissance. We'll see you in the next episode.